All right, folks, we are live. We are back today with our esteemed guest, Joel Gomez. Thank you for coming back. We always appreciate you on the channel. And it was so great to meet you and Beth finally in person during Swornfest. It was like that was like finally to be able to see you guys because I think the last time I saw you was like San Diego, and that was like a long time ago.
Yeah, that was quite a while back, huh?
That's when it was Top Cow, those kind of days. And I was like, man, it brought back memories when you signed my that book for me. I was like, this is an old one. It's because it's got you and Beth. And I'm like, this is like it was monumental for me because I was like, what's here?
What do you remember about that San Diego? Where were you that you went there?
I was living in California at the time. Actually,
Oh, okay.
I lived up in Santa Maria, up in the
Oh,
Central
wow.
Coast, and so I would come down to San Diego every year before the whole lottery system happened.
Yeah,
But every year I'd go as when I could. Always enjoyed it. It was a blast. It was before the celebrities really took off, right? Like it was still a comic
right,
convention back then.
right.
So you could go see like Neil Adams, Stan Lee, all the old guys.
Hmm.
Um, Beth, hi Beth, hey Joe.
She was gracious. Beth was gracious enough to let me use her Twitch studio space. So she's over in my desk area watching us from YouTube.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I was watching her the other night when she was doing Grump, and it's always fun to watch like how everybody's art is different, right? It's different styles, and see like how
Yeah.
all the mediums that go through it. Because she was working on the card and the
Mm.
shimmer stuff that was on it. And I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's
so
cool, man. I really get a kick out of her streams because some of her regular viewers, one is from Australia, and another one is from Japan, and it's always neat to try to guess the time frames. Like, okay, it's really early morning for you, and it's like mid afternoon for you. And what day is it? It's usually a day ahead,
hmm
so that's always kind of neat. But
it always throws you for a
technology,
loop. I
yeah, exactly.
Because I remember when I lived in Korea, it was the same way. Like trying to call people, hey, what time is it there? Oh, it's like 5 in the morning. Oh, well, we're going to bed. And it was
How long did you live in Korea?
about a year, roughly. I
What
lived
was your
there.
what, what was your favorite thing about living in Korea?
My favorite thing about Korea was the food,
I
and the
bet.
culture. Because I got spoiled because I have a golden rule, right? Like when I go to a foreign country, right? I don't eat American food. I eat whatever's
Hmm.
local.
That's good.
Just like when I lived in Japan, it was the same way. I lived there for almost 2 years, and so I always
What
ate
part of
Japanese.
Japan did you live in?
Um, Over in Okinawa,
Mm,
Tokyo, did a lot of
hmm.
traveling to like Osaka, Nagasaki.
Okinawa,
Got
that's more like a tropical setting, yeah? Warmer
It
weather?
is, yeah. It was when
Yeah.
you could still take the boat over to the mainland, and it was a real
Oh,
cheap,
nice.
So I had a blast. I'd go back in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
because it was but it's so much different now than when I went. Because when I went, it was in the early 2000s, right? So it's 20 years ago, and things
I
have a
know,
lot, and I can't believe it's been that long already because things have
right?
changed so much. Because the last time I went, I'm like, even downtown Tokyo is completely different. Like the
I
scene
bet.
is a lot different. I'm like, okay, I realize I'm becoming the older guy now versus the young guy that I used to be there.
Yeah. Yep. Happens to the best of us, I guess, right?
It does.
So what was your least favorite thing about being in Korea?
I think the least part was the actual work, right? Because I was military when I was there,
Hmm.
so 12-hour shifts plus exercises and stuff like that. So you get ingrained into doing that kind of work, but then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you want to go out and go see stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
you're in a foreign country. Like for me,
Sure.
I'm all
Sure.
about seeing like all the trees. So I'm a big tree guy, so I like seeing like the trees, the colors, and like
Wait,
especially
what tree guy? Like, how are you a tree guy? What does that mean? Do you take pictures of the trees?
like pictures of trees. I like seeing like the seasons change.
Oh,
Like
that's
the
cool. Yeah.
because in California our seasons don't really change, right? It's
Right.
it's the, it's the same seasons. It's like oh, it's nice to see oranges and reds, and then in the wintertime seeing the actual snow show up.
That's
Um,
cool.
so I had a good time. I mean, I'd go back in a heartbeat, but
Sure.
with my kids the way it is now, it's like maybe whenever I'll go visit, occasionally, but I don't think I'll see me living there in my future anytime soon.
Yeah, that would be such a huge transition, you know.
I mean, it'd be easy for me, but it would be hard on the kids, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that's exactly what I was thinking too, you know, because as an adult, I mean, obviously you're learning things all the time, but not as much as a young little kid. It's just learning their way, you know. It could be interesting though, but you never know.
Well, and it's like my wife, she's Filipino, right? So we have a
Oh,
cultural family. So it's kind of like we took our daughter last year to the Philippines to go meet
what did you
her
think of that?
family.
What did you guys think of that? Did you guys have a good time?
Oh, we had a great time. I had worked there before for about a little over 6 months when I was in the military, so I really got used to the company, the people, the culture, and
Hmm.
I extremely love the food, which is a bad thing because I don't need to overeat, but it's so
Right.
good. You know how it
Sure.
is,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
uh, but we always have a good time. The next trip we go, we're going to take all the kids because last time we just took the youngest to meet the grandparents,
Hmm.
and that was a trip for of a lifetime. 14 hours each way to
Ooh.
from Dallas to South Korea to Incheon, and then from Incheon to the Philippines and Manila. Having not even a 1 year old is very hard on an airplane.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Holy cow, that's nuts.
Yeah, and try not I will say
So,
hundred
so
percent.
you guys were those guys on the
We
plane?
were those guys, and we tried not to be those guys, but you know what? It was that's why we kind of did things like in advance. Like, hey, I need the baby stroller, the baby basket,
Right,
right? So the baby can
right.
sleep and stuff. And then charge your phone the whole time because in that way the kid can watch something because they're going to get bored and start. And it's like
Yeah,
the 14-hour flight. I mean, they'll sleep a good chunk of it, but then the other part they want to eat and play. And
yeah,
then you're sitting there with like two other people next to you on the plane. So,
yeah.
but God bless Korean Air. They did above and beyond. They always were trying to help and take care, help with the kid. They saw how stressed out we were, and so
Sure.
they're like, "Hey, you guys are doing good. Don't worry. We see it all the time."
That's cool. I mean, because they probably do see it all the time, you know? Um, yeah, that's awesome. And then plus, you guys did the thing where you were able to take the kids to the in-laws or, you know, to see her family. So that's like a cool thing. And um, yeah, that's just, it's worth it. It's not for nothing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It was fun for us. I mean, we spent some time there. Let the
How long
our
were you there?
daughter. We were there for about 2 weeks, roughly.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, so we dropped off the kid to be with the family and the grandparent for a while, and then actually took a bus over. We flew first to Malaysia. We went and spent some time in Malaysia, and then we rode the bus to Singapore, and then we
Oh, so
took.
that's cool. So wait, you guys were you left your kid like basically in laws babysitter and we're out.
Yep, yep.
That's awesome.
Mom and dad taking a vacation too.
See, with that in your mind, your 14-hour flight is like more like I can do this.
It's
I can.
worth it.
This is gonna be worth it, man.
It is. It was so worth it.
That's
But
cool. So you had a good time. You had a good trip,
we did walked a
and
lot.
you got to have family time on top of all that.
We did, and we did a lot of driving, and I got to see a lot of sightseeing stuff in the Philippines too, that I hadn't
Is
got
it
to
like
see.
tropical there? It's
It
tropical, right?
is,
It's,
yeah,
it's a
it's
little island.
tropical.
I've
Yeah,
never been. I don't know.
yeah, it's humid as it's just like just like Japan is, right? You get the hot tropic, humidity. It gets just like that there
Hmm.
too. Lots of jungle. Where they lived at is more like the northern side, so you get to see more of the fields and the mountains and stuff. So it was kind of nice to be away from the big city too, as well.
That's pretty cool. So you guys going back?
We probably will. We probably try to go every couple of years. You know,
That's cool.
we just went through the whole process of getting the kids all their passports and everything. So,
Hmm.
so
That'll make it easier because what's like they last 10 years or something like that.
You know what? They only last actually 5 years for kids. And
Oh, because they changed so much, right?
they do, and that's what they were telling us. They're like, no, it's good for 5 years because their features change so much in the time frame. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, hey, but at least it's 5 years. I'll take that, you know.
That's true. Yeah, that's not too bad. Well, that's good, man. You had a good trip.
We did. How was y'all's trip to Japan? I know you guys went not too long ago.
Yeah, we go every year for Tokyo Comic Con. We've been going. Oh gosh, I want to say this. We've gone 4 or 5 times, and we went twice before the pandemic, and then we've been, I think, 2 or 3 times after the pandemic. We just love it. I mean, the show's okay. It's interesting. The first time I went, I was under the assumption that I was going to see like manga artists and look at the way they do art and you see that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the show itself is it's a very Western show, meaning they have a lot of American artists, celebrities from American movies and shows. Most of the people there are into Marvel and DC and American comics. Okay. So it isn't like going to a show where there's going to be manga, if that makes sense. I liked it. I mean, it's still a good time. The show's it's pretty good. We really just use it as an excuse to be in Tokyo because then the show is 3 days. And then we take an extra 3 days to be in Shinjuku and other areas of Tokyo to go check out stuff. But we love it. We go back every year. This year will be in the first week of December.
Okay.
So we'll be doing that show, and that's great because Beth, she took her Grump book and she had it translated. So last year she had a Japanese edition of the graphic novel there with her, and I would take some of the sketch covers that I have, or I do commissions at the show. And so it's fun. It's for us. It's just an excuse to be out in Japan, you know.
And it's different than here, right? Because like the stateside convention's a little bit different than an overseas one. Because I've been to Hong Kong's, convention a couple of times.
That's cool.
And it was always they love our stuff as much as we love their stuff, right? And that's kind of how it is. It's like, and you'll see that, like even in the Philippines when we were there. I found comic shops in the Philippines, right? And they're Marvel, DC, and I even found old Chaos stuff, right, in one store.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm like y'all been holding on to this stuff for like years. Like nobody knows what it really is, right? And that's kind of, it's like somebody that read it probably was an American or somebody way back when in the 90s, right? And probably dropped them off at a comic shop. Hey, I'm trading this in for something else. But some people just finally picked it up. I'm like, oh, cool. This is something different than the normal big two. It's like, it's like, and it's not Image. It's not Spawn, Dynamite, of course, wasn't really big back then, so it's not, you don't have Dynamite, Zenescope, Top Cow was getting bigger at the time, as far as like Fathom had just came out with Michael Turner and stuff like that, and Soulcore. And then you start bringing in Witchblade, those ones. And and then that's where I kind of made the transition, right? From the big two to the independent.
Interesting. That's cool.
Because I was already doing Lady Death. I was already doing Chaos stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But then I got kind of tired of doing the Marvel DC thing, right? Because there was just so much out there. But then at the same time, like I don't want to buy 50 books to understand one story.
Right.
Like I remember when you did the covers for Brightest Day, right? Like with
That's
Ryan. Because I remember I picked up all those covers, right? Because everybody wanted to make that connecting cover look, right? They wanted to see the whole thing. And it was cool to see at that time. But then, that was a good representation of a good story in one story, right? Like it was one cohesive story. It fed into the bigger Brightest Day arc, but at the same time, you didn't have to read everything to get the idea.
Yeah, that's true.
So I kind of made the transition really after Jeff Johns stopped in DC for a lot of his stuff. So when he stopped doing Green Lantern, he stopped doing like Brightest Day. That's kind of when I peeled off and then went to more towards like Witchblade, Darkness, you know, and that's when I met Eric for the first time. You know, when he was doing, yeah. But yeah, when he first started doing this, I'm like, so a lot of these guys that I'm seeing now that are doing so well, like you, Eric, and you know, all those guys, it's like I'm glad to see how it's came. Now, granted, that's 20 years ago, right?
I know, right?
It's like
Jeez.
it's like you don't really think of it in perspective like that until it's like when you look at the comic book and when it was actually printed, you're like, that was a long time ago.
Like,
You know,
damn,
and
that
then,
was so long ago.
and like we had the 30th anniversary this year for Lady Death, right? And it's like
That's right.
it's kind of crazy to think like how long we've been doing this, but that's kind of how our world is in the independent industry. It's like we're
That's
all
true.
a niche industry. We all kind of know each other, so we all kind of help and try to take care of one another as we go through it. You know,
Yeah,
so
I feel like Kickstarter and I don't know, all the different ways people can connect with an audience, like through social media or you know, YouTube or whatever, where it feels like there's more like a resurgence in non-mainstream comics where there's enough of a platform for everybody to build some kind of a fan base without needing the old conduit or network of, you know, solicitations or, you know, distribution, where you can now directly connect with your audience and, you know, make a living sometimes and supplement your income most of the time through these networking ways. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting, you know.
well, and that's kind of the thing, right? Like I took a break for a while as well because when I was at the military, you don't have a lot of time, right?
Right.
And so I didn't read and do a lot, but I watched a lot of anime really at the time because that was
That's
easy.
interesting.
Because I've always been an anime guy since the '80s.
Okay.
So I grew up with Macross. I grew up with Gundam and those kind of things. So when the '90s came in, right, Ghost in the Shell, that was my era, right? Rurouni
Yeah.
Kenshin came out, you know, those kind, and Dragon Ball. And it's always funny what I would hear things. I watched the Japanese version, not the
Oh,
American
interesting.
version. And
So would you
so
watch it dubbed
no, I would
or
watch
with
it
subtitles?
with horrible subtitles for a long time until I learned how to, you know, listen and actually pick up some Japanese over time. And I'm
Oh,
like, oh,
damn.
and I was like, okay, you know, when I heard the American version, I'm like, this does not sound right, right?
Right.
Especially like when Goku actually has a female, you know, lady voicing him, right? And it's like, and I'm so used to her voice, and then I see
Right.
this big American do. I'm like, this doesn't sound right, but to
That's
me, it was one of those things, right? The 90s and 2000s is what brought a lot of people together. And that's because of anime comics, right? Like it used to be comics was a thing that you didn't talk about, right? Because that was nerdy, that was geeky, that was kind of stuff that
right.
people are like, oh no, you're one of those people. You know, you're the D&D guy or whatever. You know, you go sit in your corner and do your thing. You
Go over
do
there.
exactly. And you know, and then in the late 90s, 2000, we saw that the resurgence of it came out, and then
Right.
it wasn't such a, you know, consternation around it anymore. People were like they were open to the idea.
What do you think it's
Yeah.
like now? What do you think? Is it more open? Is it good movies and all that? You think?
I think it's about as open as almost general talking now, right? Because of the
And I think
movies
that's why
into
people are like, now it's kind of lost its steam.
it has. It's like if you think about like when Big Bang Theory came out, right? Like
Hmm.
that made it mainstream, right? To it's okay
Yes.
to be a comic collector. It's all right,
Right.
it's okay to
Right.
do that. But then really when that show died down, right, and they started in it, you start to see it's kind of tailor off, right? And so now it's kind of like the people that are in it are the people that want to actually be in it for the long haul. It isn't
Right.
just the hey, oh, it's not just a fad, right? A lot of us that are being comic readers and writers and artists, we've been doing this for a long time, and we're going to continue doing it because we enjoy what we do, right?
Yeah.
And the fad people have kind of faded out of that scene now. So what?
I feel like since, oh geez, I'd say the early 2000s, maybe like 2005, six, I saw like the conventions they kind of took a huge upswing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I would say, I don't know, like 2012, 2014, they felt like that was like the zenith of convention popularity. Like there was so many people at conventions due to the popularity of the movies that were all coming out.
Mhm.
And I feel like since then, it's kind of like subsided a little bit. It's not as heavily, promoted, or they're not as busy as those times used to be. And I think that because, like you said, it's like the people who were just kind of jumping on board as a fad, they kind of jumped off board by then, and it's now gone. It's like the ebb and flow, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's returning back to what it used to be like, but it's different now because now it's so many, as I was saying before, because of people's ability to connect and the platforms everyone has, it's made it so that the pie is cut up into even smaller pieces where you could have a sliver of the pie with your creator owned book and not have ginormous numbers, but be able to support a little bit of yourself, if not support your living through, creating content specifically for a particular audience.
And I've seen a lot of that in two perspectives, right? I've seen it in social media, right? Like people have social
Like, what do you mean?
media. So if you think about, say, 10, 15 years ago, right? Somebody that did YouTube or does Instagram or something like that, right? There wasn't a whole lot of money being made at the time, unless you were like one of the top people, right? At the time.
Right.
Now anybody that can do a TikTok, right, or can do an Instagram, you can monopolize that and monetize that a lot. So there's a lot of people who are not working traditional jobs now. They're doing a social media job now. And guess
Mm-hmm.
what? It's paying the bills. It's doing everything. And some of these people get paid very, very well while doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then I also think from the second aspect is Kickstarter, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter has really opened up, probably I would say within the last 5 years, a lot of doors for people who never thought that those doors could be open, right? As far as
Yeah.
being a creator or being an artist or being, um, working in the field that they wanted to but never could, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you've seen the struggles, right? You'll see some that struggled to make it to get the funding, right, for the
Mm-hmm.
first couple of times. But then if you just watch their progression, right, over time they get more people, they get more followers, they get bigger and bigger, and then they can actually get their story out there the way they want to.
Mm-hmm. How
It's a
many? Like, do you back a lot of Kickstarters, right?
I do, yeah.
How many would you guess you back in a year? Like more than five? More than 10?
Probably 30,
Wow.
20 to.
So wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, but what I do is I don't spend a lot at each one, right? Unless
Well,
it's
I was going to ask, my next question was to be like, would you say you bought more Kickstarter books than you would buy books at a comic book store?
absolutely right. And
Yeah,
so
that's cool. Okay.
be, because the only ones I'm buying at the LCS now are usually artist created covers, right? That are specifically done for an LCS, or if it's a book, right? Like Dynamite, right? If they put out a book and say Mike Crone does a cover, right, for Dynamite,
Right.
or Sabine does one, I'll pick it up through my LCS. It's a lot easier to do it that way. Or if there's a story that I'm reading, like I'm reading Thundercats, right? And Thundercats is only done through an LCS and through Diamond. So it's like I have to go that route. But then also there's a camaraderie, right, around the LCS as well. It's like I've known the guys forever and a day, right? And so I'll buy stuff through them. Even coffin stuff too, I'll buy through them because it ends up giving a market, making a more of a market for coffin in my area that wouldn't be there typically, right? If I'm the only guy that buy it, but if they put it on the rack, somebody else might see it. It might grow the network to grow the
Right.
availability for other people to see it. Um,
Right.
But what typically happens is I'll say, hey, if it's like we have Lady That Demonic Owens, right? The number 1 and number 2 issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Kickstarter, they're one book, but in the LCS, they split them into 2 different books. They split them up a lot of the times, but then they have a different cover than what's in the Kickstarter, right? And so, me being a collector of covers and artists, right? I'll be like, I want that cover too, right? If Don does this one, if you have one, right, that's not done. Now, I love how Coffin does it, right? Coffin says you can get it through LCS or you can get it directly from us, either way.
Right.
You know, so they give you that option, but I also like to support local as well because that keeps that comic shop alive. Because if we don't go there and buy books, they all close.
Right.
And so you could see where Kickstarters could be bad for LCS or they could be good for LCS, depending on what it is. Because they can be bad because you're taking the money away from the LCS to go towards the Kickstarter funds. But then they could be good because now they have new stories and new books that could be put into the LCS that never would have been.
The LCS, do they pick up Kickstarter books and put them?
So,
do they sell the Kickstarter books there?
So what they'll do is they'll talk to the artists, right, and they'll end up having a store exclusive a lot of the times now, right? So like Charter Comics, for example, is our local LCS here. Charter runs, and they have like 5 or 6 artists, right, who do all their own Kickstarters for their books, right? But then they have an LCS version as well. And so the LCS version gets sold at their actual comic shop. So it's kind of nice to have a diversity, right, of both.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to have both sides. But yeah, I spend a lot more on Kickstarter, especially at Coffin, because of the packages, right, that Coffin does, the incentives, right? And I told Brian when I was at Swarmfest, I was like, you guys have the market, right? I mean, you guys are the gold standard for Kickstarter.
That's cool.
Because if you look at successfully how much they make during every Kickstarter, it shows over time, like what they've done and the work they put into this, and the fan base is loyal, about as loyal as you're ever going to get to that. I mean, I'm not saying that Dynamite doesn't make a lot with theirs, and whatnot, but I can guarantee you, right, they're looking at a different audience than what ours is. Ours is kind of focusing on our stories, our work that we all enjoy, right? Whereas Dynamite, the ones I buy from Dynamite from Kickstarter are the old books, a lot of the time. Or I'm buying from Top Cow still, because like when I buy,
do they do Kickstarters or you mean
do.
Yes?
They do Kickstarters as well, because I picked up the omnibuses for Witchblade and Darkness.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Through Kickstarter.
How'd you like the whole thing they did? Was it a cool, did they have great reward tiers and stuff like that?
They had good tiers and stuff. They had like, stickers and coins and stuff like that. So, I mean, they did some good stuff with it, which Image has always been really good about theirs. But it's one of those things where I was like, I'm looking for old books, at that point, through Image and that, because I don't read a lot of the current Image. I read a lot of the old Image,
interesting.
Like I think the newest one I'd written or read was Gideon Falls, and that was a while back.
Which one was that one? Was that oh my gosh, was that what was the writer for that?
Let's see. I want to say,
was that like a horror book?
It was a horror book. Who was it?
I think I read most of that.
I think Millar. Mark Millar.
No, was it Millar? No, wasn't it the?
Oh who was that? That was.
He did Sweet Tooth.
Lee Meyer.
Yes, wasn't it not Jordy? I can't remember his name.
Yeah, it's like
Jeffrey Lemire.
Yeah, Jeffrey Lemire. Yeah,
is that
I always say Lee Meyer. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's Lee Meyer. All right. Oh,
but yeah, but that was like the last thing I read, because
that was him, right? Gideon Falls. That was like the real black and white, or not black and white, but high contrast noir.
Yeah, very bright and very dark.
Where the guy he didn't know, like he had like a little face mask thing on sometimes.
Going through
I read that one.
Yeah, through the apocalypse.
Yeah, that was pretty creepy. That was cool. I liked it.
I mean, And that was the thing, like with Image, is that they changed. They're not the superhero anymore. They're more of the like, hey, the different ideas that people want to write about, which is
Hmm.
a little different. Like I
Yeah.
was so used to reading like the Witchblade of the Darkness,
Mhm.
Spawn, Savage Dragon, which I saw a Savage Dragon issue the other day, and I'm like, you're still creating Savage Dragon? Yes, Eric Larson's still creating that. So him and
Did you read it?
Todd, no, because I mean it's I was like it's like issue 100 or no like 200 or something. I'm like, man, I stopped reading that when I was like on issue 30 or 40 way back when.
You're like, I don't even know what's going on anymore.
I have no idea what's going on anymore.
Do you read any of the Spawn books?
I do sometimes. Like I'm a huge fan of the Temple Smith version of Hellspawn.
Oh, that's cool.
That Stephen Niles and them had did.
Yeah.
Because it was more of a dark representation of like what if,
Right.
and I was like, I really enjoyed that one. But seeing Angela get taken to Marvel, that was kind of a weird one for me because I really liked her being, the hey, I'm trying to take down all the spawns,
Right.
that's in the universe. I'm like, okay. So I lost Angela, Cagliostro is no longer there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a lot of differences. But I understand though that you also have to evolve too as well.
Sure. Have you
Because
checked out the new line of books at all?
I've not touched it. The last one I got was, I want to say like 200 and something was the last one I picked up. I picked up the 300 issue just because it's the 300th issue. Right. And I was like, that's a milestone for me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get that. Also, because it was a blank cover too that has
Oh, wow.
somebody draw on.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's a big difference. Like I remember getting the toys and the comics, back in the 90s when they first put out all the Spawn figures. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. You get a comic book with it,
Right.
and then Marvel did the same thing with their stuff. And I'm like, but that was the last thing. Other than that, mine's all pretty much Coffin or a writer or artist from Coffin. Typically, a lot now. It's like
Hmm.
I do a lot of like con artists, right? With Ryan Kincaid stuff. I do Marat's Counterpoint, his books and stuff. So there's.
Cool.
I have a lot of them I read and go through because I like the different styles and also to
Right.
support them.
Yeah.
But then, like when you do a cover, like you did for Murder Nun, right? For Sun Case, it's like, let me pick that because I support all the Sun Case stuff too. Because
I didn't know that they had it was, oh gosh, I think, I want to say his name was Justin. I'm not sure. I may be getting this wrong, but he was the writer of Murder Nun. And he had reached out to me and said that they were interested in me doing a cover, and that's how I learned. It was a while ago, and that's how I learned that Sankei had this whole line of books. I was like, "Holy cow, that's so cool!"
Yeah.
And it had me checking out their Obscura Comics website with all the different books they had, and I was just blown away. Again, it goes back to the thing I was saying earlier, where you have this platform where you can connect with your fans directly, and if you have a product they're really into, you can directly sell your work to them. And I had no idea they had a line of these books, and they look so cool because their cover art is amazing. Yeah, it was really neat to see. I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And he's like, thanks. He said, we're working on this. We've been working on these books for a while. And then I was like, wait, you and Sankei? Like, yeah, she's part owner, or she's, the co-publisher or whatever. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's so cool. I was like, I just saw it just gave me wow, sky's the limit. You can do anything.
That's right.
So that was pretty positive thing where I just thought, wow, an artist can do that. It's inspiring. That's what it was.
I mean, and it's a great platform, right? Kickstarter is a great platform for that reason. I remember when Marat first did Pray for the Center, the first issue that came out way back when. And I remember like picking. I'm like, this is something like fun to read, right? It's a sci-fi book, right? About this
Yeah.
girl. But I'm like, it was kind of cool to see like he made something out of that. Now he does his do you poo and all those stuff in Counterpoint, but and the naughty and nice. But I was like, Pray for the Sinner was like my jam, right, from Counterpoint, because the story was really built up. The artistry was really
Was it a horror, like a superhero or a supernatural?
sci-fi.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a sci-fi book, and so it's kind of nice to see people be able to do what they want to do, right, and push it and
Yeah.
push it and push it, and there's no reason nobody can't now, right? Like I've got a friend, she's a novelist, right? She's written many novels, but she's converting those to comics now, right? And so
Oh,
she's
that's
converged,
cool.
and so but she's got probably 30 issues written already.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of it's just catching up now with the art. You got to get the art, you got to get the lettering, the coloring, and everything done.
What
And
genre would you say her books are in?
horror, yeah, it's
Oh,
about
okay.
horror. It's sort of like if it's you've watched Supernatural, right?
I know the show. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's something like it's similar to that. It's got an angel and a demon in it, right? And then they're trying to like destroy and stop everything that's bad in the world.
Mm.
So kind of thing. But then it goes through different stages, right? Like different eras of years, because they're reincarnated, because they're an angel and a demon.
Hmm.
So they don't even realize when they've been reincarnated to do the same work again.
Huh.
So it's kind of cool to see, like, and ironically too, when she finishes her Kickstarter, within
Yeah.
2 weeks she's already mailed it to you,
Oh,
because
wow.
she's already pre-printed it, right? She's already working on the next issue
Oh, I see.
and doing that. So it's kind of cool to see it come out like that. Now our stuff, we can't do that at Coffin, because there's
Right.
a lot of books. Like I would love to see the numbers one day, like how many books are printed, because you see the pictures when Brian's signing, right? And and I'm like, and I'm trying to count. I'm like, dude, there's like there must be like 300, 400 books just on
Well, I
that
mean,
one page.
we've seen like then the the headquarters, the compound where it's like
Mm-hmm.
just the shipping, or the area for prepping stuff. Like it's massive. So you go like, oh man, they deal in like volume. You know
Oh
what I mean?
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a sight to behold, man. I'll tell you that.
I mean, it was cool to go see the new HQ this last time, and I was like, when we were going through, I'm like, I remember when that first came out. I remember when that came out in the '90s. I remember, like, especially with the vault room that he's got. I'm like, man, that's a long time ago, but it's cool to see the history. Like
I
you
like
go,
seeing the museum.
mhm. Like when
That's so
you see the old evil Ernie stuff, you see the chaos, and then you see kind of it, it morphs into the Coffin, and then it comes around to what we're at today. So I'm like, that museum they did is really good, and I really appreciate like all the time and effort, because that stuff's old. Like that
yeah.
old evil Ernie stuff is like from the like 1990, 1991, and it's like you're never gonna find that stuff hardly ever. And if you do, if you want to buy that, you're gonna
Yeah.
pay a pretty premium for it.
What a crazy thing! Like that guy, man. He's so, or both of them. Brian and Francisca.
Hmm.
They're so inspirational because, like, you think about what they've probably reinvented them, not reinvented, but they've like found a way to integrate themselves into a new version of the game, and be successful at it without ever having like some sort of um, I don't know. They've always been independent. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? And they've always found a way to do it their way. And that's amazing. That's a testament to just their creativity and their, I don't know, like they're just like badass entrepreneurs, right? And they get no like love from the general like public or mainstream comics,
no,
Um, And I mean, it's not they. I don't think they care, but in a way, they're missing out in seeing like, look at how these people are doing it. Like I can only imagine all the different indie creators or comics folk who look up to them and the way they do Kickstarters as a template for how they should do a Kickstarter. You know what I mean? And I don't know, it blows me away. I learn so much anytime I'm around them, just to see how they manage things, how they carry themselves, their branding. Like they're like they're just truly creative, independent people, and they find a way to get it done. You know what I mean?
They
It's pretty
do.
cool.
And the thing that was like for me, right? Like I'd taken a break from the comics, right? Because when I was in the military, so I remember, when Lady Death had moved, from Chaos to Avatar, and through Boundless and stuff. And so I stopped reading it, because after Boundless, they said it was pretty much done.
Right.
And when I came back, probably about 5 years ago, 4 years maybe ago, and I found out that no, Coffin was built, in 2007, and then they brought back everything. It took them a while before they brought out Chaos Rules and stuff, but they were starting and building up again. I'm like, that's cool, because you know what? You just have two generations now. You have the old Chaos generation, but like my era was, and now you have the new generation of people who are just getting into Coffin as Coffin, right? They don't have the background or understanding what, like, say, Evil
Right.
Ernie, Purgatory, or like those kind of things. They're coming into it where it's Lady Death, it's La Muerta, it's Hell Witch, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, it's cool that we can bridge that gap. And I think Kickstarter is the real reason why we bridge that gap. And because
Yeah.
Brian and Francisco pushed it and was able to get everybody to come together around something that's core that we all enjoyed. Um, and they're just great people to be around. I mean, they're
Yeah.
some of the best people I've ever worked with. So it's like I enjoy it. That's why I told them, I said, you know what? Don't worry, I'm always going to be here. 'Cause I want to keep.
What do you think is so like that makes people like they have such an understanding of like their fan base, or like they have such a strong following backing? Like, what do you think it is? Like, what is it? Is it Lady Death? Is it the characters? Is it the brand? What is it? I have no idea.
To me, like, for example, Swarmfest, right? So
Right.
Swarmfest is our convention where we all to get together, we hang out, we have a good time for 3 or 4 days.
Beth says Jay Taylor has a question.
Jay.
You on Homework for the next chapter?
Yeah. Oh, she says he asked if I will be on La Muerta for the next chapter. I'm actually, hey Jay Taylor, I'm actually working on La Muerta Nemesis right now. So yeah, I'm on board. I've got 6 pages in the can, and I'm currently working on the cover. They had me put the pages down for a minute so that I can get this cover done. But yes, it was weird being gone for an issue. It was probably good, but it was very odd from the outside looking in at a La Muerta launch Kickstarter. And I was like, oh, that could be me. But I guess it wasn't that big a deal, but it was more that I hadn't missed one, and I didn't realize it till I missed one, that it felt odd. But I was great. I think it had me coming back with a revitalized energy to like really want to do a kick-ass job. Not that I wasn't trying to before, but I felt extra motivated to really just kind of make the current issue that I'm on with Brian and Mike. I just want to do my best because I had such a blast on Gunfighter. They gave me the opportunity. They said, do you want to put Gunfighter on hold and then, work on this La Muerta chapter 10? And it was weird because Lady Gunfighter was still sort of new to me. And at that point, I was maybe halfway done with the first 48 pages. And they said, do you want to take a break and jump onto La Muerta? And I kind of decided not to, because I felt like, what if I'm on a good groove right now with Gunfighter? I feel like I've got a better understanding of the character and the story. And it's not that I didn't have one, but it was just, if you're driving around an area that you haven't been around and you've gone there maybe 3 or 4 times, you have a better understanding of the way the roads curve, where the traffic lights are. You're just more familiar with the area in general. that's kind of how I felt with Gunfighter, and I didn't want to shelve it for a minute and then have to, regenerate that feeling again. So I thought, no, let me just keep going with Gunfighter, and then when I'm done, I'll jump onto the next La Muerta chapter. And they said, okay, all right. So they gave me this shot, and I just wanted to make Gunfighter as nice as possible because I was still in that mindset, and I didn't want to have to switch hats all of a sudden. But yeah, I'm back on La Muerta chapter 11, Nemesis. So like I said, currently working on it.
Yeah, see, because we were all rioting because you didn't have anything, during the last one. We were like, where's our Gomez cover for La Muerta? There isn't one? What do you mean there's not one?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. The fact that I didn't even get to do a cover, but like I said, I was knee deep in Gunfighter, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it was La Muerta Devious, where something clicked for me, and I started finding some fun stuff creatively in my art that I wanted to push myself more. And so I was just wrapping up La Muerta Devious, where I started to find this new thing I was doing, and I was excited because I was trying to bring that into my Lady Gunfighter book, and I thought, well, that'll be great. I was changing my style a little bit. I used to use a lot more brush pen, and on Devious I started switching off and using more of a thinner line, and I liked the look of it. It had a little more detail, and I thought, well, that's great. I'd like to see if I can keep pursuing this into Lady Gunfighter, and so I carried that over into that, and I'm still doing that to this day, but it's gotten a little bit more refined. And I think that this new chapter of La Muerta, you'll see a little more detail in the line art. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying out some new things, some new inspiration that I'm looking at. Anytime I get a new script from these guys, I always try to have a mood board or like a series of images to carry me through the 48 pages. And what I mean by that is that I'll look at new artists or photos that fit the mood of the story that Mike or Brian together have worked up. And I'll look to those inspiration points for different sections of the book. So for example, I'll read a script, and then in page 10, I'm just making this up, it'll say, we're in a moody swamp when it's dimly lit, and I'll go Google stuff for a moody, weird swamp or something, right? And something that, if I find something that'll catch my eye for some sort of descriptor that I think fits for that book, I'll then print it out and save it. And so then later when I get to said page, I'll have had that idea marinating in my head for a while because I've seen it earlier. I'll look it up again and I'll go, oh yeah, I remember that. And by that time, I'll have that idea in my head and some. So it'll be, sometimes it won't be directly associated to the original inspiration or reference that I found, but it'll already be like 2 or 3 stages past that. So that always keeps me thinking and looking at new, fresh ideas to kind of inject into the story, so it doesn't just get boring or stale for the readers, and just keeps me trying new stuff,
And you got to kind of do that, right? Like, I've talked to so many artists, right? They have reference models for a reason, right? And that's the main reason, right? It's like, because trying to see, like, how does this look in the real world and how to make this look into a comic. It's 2 different things, right? And there is some people that can do like real world adaptations almost, right? Like 3D looking kind of places. But to me, it's a comic book, right? And comics are a different medium. If it was a, 3D kind of like realistic, I'd rather just watch a movie at that point, right? Versus a comic, because I want to see your interpretation of it, what you think is going to look like, if you were going through that kind of situation.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the key, because I got my start as a background artist, helping guys out, and I was always really good at just looking at photos and transferring an idea of an image or a background or whatever onto the page. And I remember I was talking to Scott Williams, the inker, once, and he was talking to me about my backgrounds, and he said, you should always approach it with the idea of cartooning it. And I said, what? And he said, you should cartoon your backgrounds. And I'm like, what does that mean? And so he explained, like, don't draw every window, like just kind of like impressionistic, draw part of the frame of the window and then draw another frame, and don't fill in all the details. Let the reader's eye and their imagination fill in the blanks. And I was like, that's amazing. You're right. And so just the experience of working with enough guys that gave you that impression. And when I first started, I was assisting at Top Cow, and I wasn't necessarily like an intern. I just was lucky to be there. I'm lucky they didn't kick me out. And I remember asking Mark Silvestri about backgrounding, and he had this really cool thing that he would do, and he would create layers. And so a lot of times, to separate a foreground character from the direct background of them, he wouldn't let the lines of the background touch the character. So like, I don't know, like an inch, maybe an inch and a half above the character, the lines would start breaking up and being like little tick lines. And the background behind that had the same effect as well. So it would create this layering technique that made it seem like, I don't know, there's like atmospheric mist or separation between the foreground, middle ground, and background, And it was just one of those tricks where I realized, like, oh, that's like magic. Like, oh, look at that. Like, I don't even notice it. I didn't, until he pointed it out. Like, I didn't think about it. I didn't realize what he was doing. And those types of tricks that come with the art of comic book storytelling, cartooning, whatever you want to call it, where it isn't directly copying reality. It's to put something through a filter in your mind to create this imaginary world and let the audience participate, And so those are some of the things that I had learned from those guys. So.
I always enjoy seeing though. Like I remember, when I got your sketchbook, right, and you had all these backgrounds, right, throughout the whole sketchbook, like especially like the Batman one. Like we all know the Batman one, right? Because we always remember that one. But you don't see many artists doing that anymore, right? Like they're not going into the details of the background, like. Sora showed me one the other day, right? Like where it's Vampirella, right? And she's got like clouds, right? But then you see a building, and then you see water, right? And like different stages of the background, you see different things, and the details are there to go with it. So I enjoy details. I always have for that reason. Yeah. But I also know too that's a lot of work for you guys as well, because it takes time to do all those minute details, right? Trying to get that little pieces and parts in there takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I like it when people can appreciate it, and I think I've always been a sucker for a really cool establishing shot that shows the sense of the tone or the mood of the thing you're about to enjoy, or to, really give you the point of something in the sense that, like, look at this massive city, or look at this particular dark area with all these lights and things. And it just gives a sense of not value, but it's like the budget of a film versus the budget of like a TV show, right? And the scale and the depth add to that epic sense of like, this is huge, or because it's like we spared no budget, right? And I think that firmly or well placed backgrounding like that could be really well, or it could be done well in a way where it sets the tone and people really get a sense of like, wow, this is really cool. They get a lot of bang for their buck,
And I appreciate that. Like I always go back to your Brightest Day covers, right? There's a lot of details. Like people, if you didn't actually look at like the steps, right? Just even the steps where the people were sitting on, there were little bitty lines and little bitty like little chips and rocks and things like that. Like if you're not paying attention, you would have not saw that. And
each chair had like a story involved with the character. So like it was Jim Lee came up with that idea. It was basically the Sistine Chapel, like
Mhm.
what was it? I can't. It's a paint. It was a Michelangelo painting. I want to say the Sistine Chapel, but it was like this table setting thing with all these apostles sitting around it, right? And so he said, you should look into that. Do you want to do that? And I was like, yeah, how do we do that? He's like, each character's throne would be a cover. And I'm like, okay. And then he goes, and then they connect. And in the middle, we'll have like the center table. And I was like, oh, okay. And I go, well, how would the center table? Because that could be like part of the poster. I was like, oh, all right. That sounds cool.
Mhm.
And so then he's like, so for each throne, you need to come up with like an idea for something that reflects the character's story or their personality or their origins. And I was like, oh, right on. Okay. Yeah. I could do that. And so then we kind of just did that. It was a huge, like, I guess like a planning thing because Ryan Sook did all the characters. And then I did every single throne. And then Ryan would just position the characters in the thrones. It turned out amazing. I had no idea the scope of it until I saw the complete thing, and it was pretty epic to see. Yeah.
I haven't seen anything since then really done like that, right? Even like in comics, right? Like that, because it was all the way around, and it was like, I'm like, huh, that would be kind of cool to see somebody do that again. But but it would take a lot of time, right? For example, like
or
if
planning.
we did it, a lot of planning. Like if we did it with if we did it with all the Lady Death characters, right? Like we could do that, right? They're all sitting around talking to Satanus, right? So and then you've got him in the middle, you've got Lady Death, Lady Satan, you have all the characters around them. You could do it that way, but then it wouldn't mean the same, right? Like that's kind of the catch-22. It's like it was done and it looked phenomenal, and I always enjoy it. If we recreated it, would it have the same effect?
You would have to find a theme that fit within the Coffin brand and their universe for, whatever's going on with the characters. But I think thematically there could be something. I mean, it wouldn't be like exactly the same thing, but I'm sure they could find something if that was in their interest, because there's a lot of ways to frame a theme, and I think the Thrones really was an easy one just because it was like a reoccurring thing. Everyone was in a particular throne. I don't know what they could do, but I'm sure if Brian and those guys, Francisca and Mike, whatever, if they wanted to create like some sort of a huge thing like that. I mean, the reusability or the ability to do more than one thing with it is outstanding, because that could be like a poster, it could be like a mini print, or it could be like a different type of, there's all kinds of things you could potentially do with that, I don't know. I'm sure they could think of something,
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right, if they did a like connecting cover set, right, like it was before, right, but maybe make it a 4x4, right? You don't have to go all the way to 12, 16 issues, right? Just do the main characters, right? Just make a huge battle scene, right? Out of the 8, right? And each character has their own book, right? And, you could do something like I've seen that done. It works and it doesn't work all the time either. Because if the theme isn't coherent, it does not work.
Right. It'd be kind of, I don't know, like maybe, again, it would have to have a theme. Like, I'm just making it up, but like if it was like a statue theme, or if it was like, like sometimes DC will do like, what is it they did recently, like a horror, where obviously it wouldn't work for Coffin, because a lot of the characters are already supernatural or horror specific, but like, remember when, here's a good idea, or a good example, sorry. DC's now doing like, they have like the knights or the medieval looking versions of their characters, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman. They could do something like that. You know what I mean? Or they could do like a Western theme thing where all the characters are 1800s style versions of themselves, But now I'm just being biased because I'm like, hey, Lady Gaga.
Exactly. We just set it up, right? Hey,
Right. I
Lady
know a
Gunfighter
guy.
walks in.
But yeah, dude, that stuff's fun. It's always cool to see when they play up a theme, and or like they can even do like a luchador series, right?
hmm
I don't know, whatever. They can come up with something.
Well, it's like I remember, I think it was what Retribution or Retaliation, right? Where they had the luchador version of La Muerta. Richard had did one, right? But then
Yeah.
there's another version of her just normal, right? And then there's another version. It was the same thing, but completely different at the same time. There was a
Yeah.
base model, but then there was a change done how.
Yeah.
So it could definitely be done.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's kind of cool. I always liken the idea of La Muerta having a basic theme, like a general theme, but like if her costume wasn't always so like, what if it was just it changed sometimes? You know what I mean?
hmm
I did that for Onslaught. I think I gave her like a different looking kind of outfit, but it was the story had her at some point wearing like a Kevlar vest, so you didn't get to see it as much. But yeah, I'd be open to exploring that more. Or I wish we had a reason to put her like, how like they have the Batmobile or something.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be cool to have like a thematic vehicle, like a motorcycle or something for La Muerta. But then it's not. It's weird because it's not like she's gonna be riding the damn thing everywhere, right?
Nah.
You'll
What
see her like once or twice in it.
get her like a Mad Max kind of, machine, car where her and Loco are riding in this bus kind of thing forever, right?
Yeah,
And
that'd be
then
kind of cool.
like an armored car.
Yeah. Or I really like the idea of what do you call it? Elseworlds
Yeah, the old
stories.
the DC Elseworld stories.
Like I've because how I did for. I mean, I still do them occasionally when they ask. The Infinity Verse, where it's like I do versions of the characters, right?
hmm
And I thought it would always be cool to do like a cyborg retell or like a cyberpunk retelling of the La Muerta story, but in the future in a cyberpunk tone, right? And so I always fancied the idea or kicked it around in my head of like having just a one-off cyberpunk style La Muerta story, but it doesn't fit because then it's like, well, what about the regular storyline? Like, how are you going to squeeze that in there? Like, is it a one-shot? Like, where does that go?
Well, it would have fit good in with cybernetic desecration because they were kind of in that future landscape with Empress Death. They could have had like the descendant of La Muerta, right? Do it.
I love stuff like that. I don't know why. And you know what? Honestly, it's strange because it's only like a sampling of something, and it reflects my tastes in that like I'm always like again going back to the Infinity Verse covers, where having the opportunity to draw, Matador La Muerta and then Viking La Muerta. It's like I'm in and out in a single image. I've like lived this whole character's backstory in one drawing, and so then I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm on to the next version, But within that is a cool concept. Like I did a samurai style Lady Death cover for Lady Death versus Hell Witch, right? I did a couple of them. And in the process of making them, I thought, man, that would be really cool to have Lady Death's story be like some sort of Ronin feudal Japan like retelling, and have Hell Witch be like an old school looking ninja from like Ninja Scroll or something within the story too. And I was like, I got caught up in the idea of that would be cool to have a feudal Japan retelling of Lady Death, and again going and spinning off into this like la la land of alternate realities for the characters. You know what I mean? But it's fun,
And it's what's fun too, like the Infinity Verse. Like we had the Tales of the Infinity Verse, right, book, which started a lot of things, right? It started out, Captain Scargrove, and started, Lady Gunfighter, like those kind of things. Like it started a lot of those stories that opened up the multiverse of Coffin Verse, right? And that was there are multiple variations across the spectrum. Empress Death being what happens if Lady Death goes bad, in
Right.
the future. And that's exactly what happened. Um, and so you could see what happens if La Muerta went bad, right? Well, kind of had that with Roja, right? Like Roja could have been the bad is, essentially the crazy bad version of La Muerta, but it's all based upon like who did what, right? Like we know her backstory, what happened to Roja, and why she turned out the way she did, but we also know why La Muerta turned out the way she did. It's the good and the evil of the sides, right? But
Yeah.
all it took was one switch, right? And it could have been the opposite.
Yeah.
Roja could have
Sure.
been the good person. La Muerta could have been the enemy. So it's kind of cool how that we have those abilities to see how it could go that way,
Yeah. Yeah. Did you like that story? Um, with Roja.
I did. I was like, man, I can't believe we killed her off in the first book, but
She's not dead.
I know it was kind of
Understanding.
it was kind of insinuated at the end. She was kind of.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, I can see her coming back, just like Mama Z. I can see Mama Z coming back one day. I'm like, it's comic world, right? Nobody stays
Sure.
dead forever.
That was a cool idea they had. I liked the character. I thought the parallels or whatever that was pretty neat, and I thought that was a little twist to it. With the way that the story played out, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And so, yeah, man, I wouldn't mind seeing her again. We'll see what happens.
And Jay says too, he's like he would love to see a Victorian La Muerta, sort of like Gotham by Gaslight. Dude, that would be awesome. I would love to see that.
That'd be pretty cool, actually. Yeah, that could be kind of neat. Again, it's like that at the taking the characters and their concepts into different realms and just dropping them in is so fun to see. And I really get a kick out of like reinterpreting those things in the stories and stuff. Like it's just fun inspiration stuff that could be something later. You never know. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's a big coffin verse. You never know where it's going to go. I mean, Brian and Mike might take it. You'll never know where it's going to go. But it's like I remember even in the Chaos days, right, when he was writing it, it's like you never knew what was going to happen back then. Like, and you really don't know now because you got two writers that's involved. So you might think you know where it's going to go. Nope, if you get turned on its head in 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, it's fun, man. It's like having worked those guys as long as I have. It's neat seeing how they come up with ideas, and it's really neat because I think sometimes reading the script, I get an idea where Mike's coming from, and then I kind of amplify that. Or it's rare that I don't understand what he's saying, or I interpret it in a way where I have to ask in an email or something.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier on, like the first few chapters, I would ask, what do you mean by this? Or where are you imagining the camera here? But now with the experience we have working together, I think we play to our strengths. And I think Mike and Brian they'll know how to give me enough direction or description, I should say, to extract like, oh, I know what he'll draw here if I say this, and so that's always kind of neat to do. Sometimes I'll miss a visual gag. I had to apologize to Mike because in La Muerta Divias there was a scene where Maria is leaving Mexico City and she's heading into the airport, and in the script, he says something to the effect of like, Maria has a duffel bag hanging over her shoulder. And I thought, like, all right, like a duffel bag. And I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Like, for some reason, I imagined, like, I kept it in my head. I had this visual of like a sailor, right? Like from the Navy.
Yeah.
Like with a bag, like, on his shoulder, right? So like it's like a bag of potatoes or some shit, right? Like he's carrying it, right? And so I thought, all right, I guess that's what he meant. And then only after I drew the page did I realize, like, no, dumbass, he just means like it has like a shoulder strap and it's hanging off of her shoulder, and the duffel bag's like below her arm, not the bag over her shoulder. You know what I mean? And so then I was like, oh man. And so I had to tell Mike, like, hey, dude, I totally misread that, and I missed the gag. And he's like, oh yeah, no, that's cool. It looks cool. And I'm like, all right, well. And so sometimes there'll be a gaffe in that way where I'll misread what is, or I'll misinterpret what the script is saying.
Mhm.
And in that scene, you could see it. She's walking through the airport, and she's literally got the bag like on top of her shoulder, you know. And so it's like, and so when I look back on it, I'm just like, man. But you know, those are the kinds of things that I'll miss. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
that's what makes us human, right? Like it's interpretation, right? It's like that's how you
Yeah.
thought it was interpreted at that point, you know. And,
Yeah.
but by the time were you already done penciled and inked at that point, or was it just pencils?
Dude, it was like 2 pages later.
Oh,
So that shit was like in the rear view, you know. And because I'm really big about I have this thing where I'm drawing, and sometimes I'm just like in the zone, and I'm going, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, this looks awesome. This is badass, you know. And I'll be like, hell yeah, that's gonna be great. And I always leave shit on my desk, so then the next day I look at it again, and then on the next day I'll come back and I'll be like, what the hell is this? What is this? You know, the eyes will be, or like the face, and it's like, what the hell? And so for people who have ever bought my original art, you'll see like a bunch of like patches with like a piece of artboard, or I'll have redrawn something and literally glued the patch onto the board, right? And that's basically why that's happened, is because something I thought looked great, the very next day I'll look at it again and go like, oh man, that looks terrible, or that could look way better. And so then I'll quickly redraw it on a separate piece of artboard and then glue it right onto the artboard. And I never I never sold my pages for a long time. I just kept them. Like I think I had like 9 chapters or 10 chapters of each 48 pages. And I had like 9 or 10 of these folders of just original art before I thought, man, what am I doing? Like I should consider selling these. And I shared the idea of it with somebody, and I asked them like, what do you think about these? Like, do you think this is bad? Like if you saw one of these pages with a patch, does that make you not want the page as much? And he's like, no, man, that's even cooler.
It is.
And he's like, I was like, well, why? What do you mean? And he's like, no, it's cool to see the process that, and behind the scenes, that's what really happened. And to know that you put something in place of it and made it better. Like, that's so cool. And I didn't consider it that way. I just thought of it as more of like a blemish or like imperfect. And so when that person gave me that perspective, I was like, all right, well, we'll see. And he was right. Like, at least people tell me to my face, they're like, oh, that's cool. I like that, you know? And so it's interesting to see people's reactions now when I share my art with them and they're flipping through the folders, and I'll say like, some of these, if you touch them, it's like Braille, and they'll laugh and they're like, what? And I say a lot of these pages have patches on them, and then they very quickly start trying to touch the pages. And as soon as they find one, they immediately find one. They start checking all the pages, and it's like they want to see like, what is that? What is that? And it's cool. I get a kick out of it when they realize something's a patch, and like, oh my God, wow. Like, how did you do that? And it's like, just an X-Acto blade and like very careful cutting, you know. And so it's just part of my pages, I guess.
Well, that's what I appreciate. Like some of the ones I got from you, right? Like on the back of them are sketches,
Yeah.
like your preliminary that you were drawing before, and then you switched the board over, and then you did it. And I was like, I always enjoy that because you get to see how it starts and where it goes.
Yeah, like I try to keep all the layouts, and then the photocopies, I save them for every page so that when anybody buys an original art page from me, they'll get the thumbnail layout, which is smaller, and then they'll get the 11 by 17 version. Because a lot of times there'll be a lot of changes or things that or will switch up from each version. The smallest layout version is just the initial thought of the idea for the page, and then it'll be changed slightly, sometimes in the larger blow up of the thing, and then I'll transfer that over to the artboard. I actually have some Lady Gunfighter pages I could share that have that with it.
Oh yeah.
Let me show you. I think I've shared some of these before, but I didn't want to reveal because the Kickstarter or people haven't received their books yet, so I don't want to reveal too much of it. But I'll share some of that. Maybe some people haven't seen these, so I'll set this up. Let's see here. Okay.
Jay says he'll get one of your pages one day.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. You should. All right, so I'm sharing my screen here, and so again, I mean, a lot of people may have already seen this, but this is like the thumbnail version. It's like a 6x4. You'll see I'll even leave room for thought balloons or, the narration. So this outside blue line is the bleed area, and then the inside blue line is the live area. So any thought balloons or, narration should be inside these blue lines, and your art can't go past this blue line or else it'll get cut off, and so here you see like my initial idea roughed in for this scene. And they had like this poster here at the bottom. So this is page 1 of Lady Gunfighter, and then I blew that thumbnail up into this, and then I worked out the perspective for this building. And then the other parts, I kind of figured I don't need to worry too much about that. And again, you see like the little captions right here. I leave room for that. And then this is the original. For the flashback sequences of this book, everything was done in pencil to make it look, different from the pages or the storyline that was happening in real time. And so it gives it a different feel. And you can see this is Lady Gunfighter, what she was doing before she was Lady Gunfighter. She was part of a Wild West show as a trick shot. And so that's, and again, like if someone bought this page, they would get the little layout, they get the printout in the original page. You see, I have a busier page I could share that with.
And I will tell everybody it's well worth the cost because Joel has some of the best prices you're going to get on pages too.
Oh, thanks, man. So again, another thumbnail. These are what I send to Mike and Brian, and then they'll approve or give me suggestions on what to change. And so here we see Lady Gunfighter in the far distance riding towards the viewer. Caption, close up of her on her horse. Caption, she's riding towards us in shadow. Word balloon, coyote running away. She's kind of looking side-eye towards this building. And so then I blow that layout up. And then here you can see. I didn't change too much with this shot here in the first panel. Panel 2, I kind of had a time with. I struggled with because this was literally the first time I drew her in such a big shot. I didn't know how was she going to sit? How does she ride? And then here I worked out the face structure for her in this shot. A lot of times too, I'll work on the back of it to get it.
Yep.
The symmetry right, to figure out like where's it sitting, so then here is the final, the pencils and inks version. You see her writing towards us here. And in the very foreground, it's just some dead sheriff from some other time. And then here she comes. Better view of her here. The coyote running past her. And her looking back at that place. So yeah, and this one's funny because I actually, panel 2, this one here is a patch. You might be able to see.
Uh-huh.
And so I didn't like how she looked the first time. I was like, man, she looks so cool. And then I looked at it the next day and I was like, damn it, this could be better. And so I redrew it. So I got one more. I'll show you this last one. So this is her coming up towards that house that she was looking at. Again, 4x6. Gunfighter on horseback. Caption, somebody here in the patio area of this home. Horse, skeleton of an old horse. Person in the home pulls their gun up. Words are had. Gunfighter getting off her horse. More words. Then we had a standing shot of Gunfighter. And then the person on the porch says a couple more words and takes a shot. So let's see. Oh, you can't see it here. But yeah, so this is basically the quick layout of it. And then this is what I worked out. The ideas. Panel 1, I felt pretty confident about. I didn't feel like I needed to futz around with it. Panels 2 through 4, I was kind of unsure about poses and looks. So I was kind of roughing it out. Panel 5, I had the shot of Gunfighter more or less figured out here. And then the old lady taking the shot. Again, at the back, working out the symmetry. Sometimes you look at something one way and you think it looks nice and you flip it over and you're like, oh, that person's eye is off or their leg looks weird or, whatever. And then this is the final shot. That's someone on the porch, Gunfighter rolling up on her horse. Horse skeleton. Old lady says some nasty stuff to horse ride or Gunfighter. Gunfighter's getting off her horse. Old lady gives her a nasty look. Gunfighter standing. And she takes her shot. Is there any patches here? Yeah, there's actually. The old lady is, I think, you can't tell, but she's a patch. This old lady's a patch right here. I'm trying to see if you can see
the edge.
Yeah, the edge of her, but you can't see it. And then the back, you can see it's always like I'm always trying to get the acting right or the pose a certain way. And so I'm always trying to work that out. But yeah, that's some of the Gunfighter stuff that I put together. It was a fun book, man. I had a blast working on that. I liked the concept behind it. I was worried. I didn't know how people would respond to it. I was excited for the book. And I know Mike and Brian were excited for the book. But maybe being in it for as long as I was, because I was doing it for at least 7-8 months and not having any feedback. Not feedback, but knowing, do people like this? It was like if I was a cook and I was making a bunch of food for people and I had like months of food and I was like, is anybody going to even eat this? And to see the Kickstarter do what it did really well, I thought, for the premise, a new character, Western theme. I was really excited about it. So I was really stoked that Brian and Mike gave me the opportunity to work on it. It was a blast. So I'm hoping we get to do something more with it. I'd love to explore. I felt like only near the end did I start really getting my feel for loosening up and giving more of my personal interpretation of the setting, because I wanted it to be Western, but I wanted it to be like scary, dark, edgy Western, like, I don't know, gritty, gross, dirty. I only touched on some of that, and I would like to explore building some of that up, especially like in the environments and the looks that people had. I told Mike there was a movie that I kept referencing. It wasn't even a great movie. It was Gore Verbinski's The Lone Ranger.
Oh, okay.
And there was something about the stills that I found in that movie where because it was a more modern, Western movie. It's not like the old classic Westerns, which were great. But this one, there was like a extra roadiness to people. Like people look dirty all the time. And, maybe it was a high definition or the way the movie was filmed or whatever. But like, there was a lot of the characters that they just looked like they hadn't bathed in like months or something, right? And then also this game, Red Dead Redemption, had a bit of that vibe too. And so I want to be able to bring more of that type of energy and like the danger and deadliness that the West had in some of that stuff. I want to be able to pour that into the books to give people that feeling of like, oh shit, this is a scary place to be by yourself. You know what I mean? Because then that gives a character like Lady Gunfighter that much more of a strength that adds to the character's dimension where like, man, she could make it out here like that. Like it just gives her that much more power to realize like in this deadly situation or world, she's able to, maintain a certain status or defend herself and others who she's, trying to help out. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
What's cool about it is, to me, like, right, I love old Western books, right? Like, I was a huge Larry McMurtry reader.
Can we say it again? Which book?
Larry McMurtry, who did the Lonesome Dove series.
Oh, okay.
So I'd read through that whole series. I love, seeing like how it was back then. To like,
how many books was that?
Let's see, you had Lonesome Dove, Return to Lonesome Dove, Streets of Laredo, Deadmans. I think there's 5 total.
Huh. Okay.
But that was kind of it was a realistic, like, hey, this is what really happens in the West kind of situation. Sort of like the grimy, grungy feeling, right? Like that's probably how it really was, right? Like in our 30s and 40s Westerns, and even like with Gunsmoke and things like that, right? The shows, that's not how the real West was. That was as a portrayal because of what they had to do with TV at the time.
Right.
Because when I think about like Drunk and Disorderly, I think people at saloons fighting, having all these kind of things. There was a lot of death really back then, So to me, I mean, Lady Gunfighter is actually probably more realistic as it was, right? In that perspective. And so when we got that first little side story of it, right, when Tales of Infinity Verse came out, that was kind of like, okay, I want to see where this goes, right, to this. And then when we talked last time, you were working on it at the time, right? And you couldn't give a whole lot because we were about to do the Kickstarter launch.
Yeah.
But now that it's gone through, people are waiting to get their books right and go through it. That's like, and I tell you that sometimes that's the most cruelest part of waiting, right? Is getting the books, or at least getting the digital, right? From the guys like, okay, I want to read the book, right? I want to get through it. Because half the time I read the digitals more than I do the physical books because A, I get it earlier than the books, and B, because
the digitals.
Huh?
When do they send you guys the digital version of the book?
Usually when it's close to being pushed out to everybody.
Like, is it like a week,
a month,
weeks?
Maybe a month, maybe a couple weeks.
Really?
It just depends on the timing.
That's cool.
And I enjoy getting it because then I can read it and then I can enjoy the covers and the artwork once it arrives.
Right. Yeah.
Like Demonic Omens, right? Like I got that like I think a week or so before the actual books got, and so I was like, all right, get to read through the story.
That's
the
cool.
next, I want to read the Lady Death La Muerta, crossover book, right? I want to read that one, which that's going to be a different perspective because it won't be your art, right? Like it's going to be, so it's going to be like, okay, let's see how somebody interprets it. But that's not, people have to remember that's not a bad thing either, right? Like,
sure.
It's like, it's a different perspective on how they do it. It might not be the Gomez style that we're all used to, but it's not a bad style either, right? It's just a different, You know, just like in the old days where, like, for example, when Jim Lee did X-Men, right? Everybody loved Jim Lee X-Men. Everybody loved that. But then, you know, A.D. Kubert came in and took over X-Men. He had
Right.
his own style. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed the Kubert style, but I also enjoyed the Jim Lee style. It's the
Right.
same thing, right? So
Right.
that's why people don't fry the guy who did Lamar to Lady Death crossover. It'll be
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think I haven't seen any of the art from it. I haven't seen any of those pages. It's like a big crossover book, right?
Yeah, it's for the Warmageddon crossover thing they got with Satanas.
That's
So,
cool.
you know, and you know that's kind of the thing I've noticed too. Like we actually do have a lot of crossover books, you know, within Coffin,
Yeah.
but it makes sense when they do it, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
no crap. Lamarta is trying to kill Lady Death because you know it's like she's finally coming down to go after. Like it makes sense to have the crossover because of the situation.
Right.
Most likely, it's like most times, right? Doesn't understand the whole situation. You get two people to fight. I mean, hell, we've even seen Hell Witch and Lady Death get along, you know,
Right.
because they're trying to fight a common enemy.
Right.
But it's interesting, but it makes sense the way they do it. And that's the thing. Like, it isn't 8,000 characters you're reading. No, you're reading about two characters. You're reading about two that have established origins, established stories, and why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad Brian doesn't do that. He does 6, 7, 8 characters, right? Main characters, right? And then those are the core stories we always read. There's always the core
Right.
3 that we always read, but then you bring in Lady Satanas, you bring in Mike Morgan now, right? You got Chaotica, you know. I would love to see Zach come back, you know, Zach the Exterminator, right? You know,
Yeah.
we haven't seen Zach and Zeke in a long time. But we've seen these core characters that make sense, right? And now you got Lady Gunfighter coming in, who's a core character, and
Yeah.
so they're
What do you think?
establishing.
What do you think of the Coffin characters? Which character do you think is best suited for like a streaming series?
The easiest one probably would actually be La Muerta, and
Think so?
the reason I say that it is. If you think about cartels, you think about, you know, kind of, you know, the Mexico City structure, right? And those, it tends to favor something pretty easier around that, right?
Well,
It's
plus it's
hard,
like modern era. Like there's no. It's almost like if you're filming a crime
crime
thing.
drama, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's harder to do the supernatural style, right? Like Lady Death, Hell Witch, demons,
Yeah.
you know, like that takes a little bit of more work to do. But
Yeah.
you know, it all depends. Is it animated or is it live action? Right?
That's true.
Animation, you can do whatever you want.
Well, Game of Thrones is a pretty epic scale show,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a big production, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I guess Lady Satanis too, because it would take place like in the
70s.
That'd be kind of cool, because I mean, they would have a little bit of like some supernatural stuff, but that could be kind of a neat thing. You know what I mean?
Well, if they wanted to do it easily, right, you could do the story of Hope first, when before Lady Death, right? Like, you know, we have tons and tons of like medieval stories and shows, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I watch Rings of Power, right? I watch Games of Thrones. I watch the prequel series now, right? And they're all medieval kind of styles, you know. So it's
Right.
like you could do that easily, right? Where you have Hope who becomes Lady Death, right? And that could be your jump board, right? Like you could do it at that point, right? You could jump in and say, okay, here's all how the world was. Here's how hell is, right? And this is how heaven is too. And so, I mean, I think they could do it. I think it would look like Supernatural, kind of, because it would be not at a high extreme level when it first starts out, but then you see the ramp up to it, right? Like your cost that it would cost to do this. Like if you're having like a horde of demons versus a horde of angels, and you've got the sworn in the middle of it, you know, fighting, you know, the progeny, it's going to take a lot of money to do that on the big screen.
Yeah, that's a big production, huh?
It is, and at that point, I would do most of it in CGI, to
Right.
save costs. I've seen a lot of like horror movies do that lately, right? Where they'll have realistic CGI, but then you still got 3 or 4 people doing the actual effects, right? They're wearing the suits, they're doing it. You have 3 or 4 people do it. The other 100 are all CGI in the
Yeah,
foreground.
that's true. Yeah, that was curious because I was like, well, I mean, what kind of a? I was realizing like there's what is it on Max? They have like the Penguin,
Yeah,
and when you think about it, it's just some guy with some prosthetics, and then it's just a crime show.
it is.
And I'm like, that's genius. Like that's so smart. Like because I don't know, good writing, and it doesn't really require super heroics or whatever, but it adds so much to the lore of the the whole Batman or Gotham universe. You know what I mean? Um, it really sets the table for other stuff down the line.
And
Uh,
that's what was kind of hard for me. Like, right, like I grew up with Tim Burton doing Batman, right, and I grew up with
right,
that style, and then the old Adam Westcott show, and then we get the Christopher Nolan series comes out for Batman, which I still love Heath Ledger's Joker to this day,
yeah,
and I always
yeah,
will. But then you have Robert Pattinson, who's the Batman. I'm like,
right.
mm, I'm having a hard time with this one. Twilight Sparkle being the Batman.
You weren't feeling it?
I weren't feeling. I mean, I always give him a chance. Like he did amazing in The Lighthouse. That was. I mean, I love that
Oh
movie.
yeah, that was great.
I mean, he
Yeah,
did. I mean, he can
yeah, that was
act,
good.
but it's just he didn't bring the Batman.
Right.
The presence that I would think of Batman, and
What'd you
neither
think
did.
of that Joker in the end?
I liked it. I like it. It's a good little twist to it, But I think like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker now, right? Like to
No, I
me,
was saying at the end of the Batman, they showed like this version of the Joker.
yeah, it's it's still not Jack Nicholson. It's
What do you
not
think of
Heath
the
Ledger.
Joaquin one? Do you like the Joaquin Phoenix one?
I think the Joaquin one is really. I think that's probably about as spot on as you can get because it's not. I mean, it's not based upon the lore, right? It's not based
Right.
upon what actually happened in the comics. He's not Red Hood. He's not. He's just a dude that went nuts.
Is that
And
crazy? Like, it's not even like, it's just like this bizarre, like, non canon kind of thing. And they're just running with it. You know what I mean?
and they are, and now they got Lady Gaga coming in to be in the second one. It's a. I mean, this is the perfect Elseworld story, right? Because
Right.
this is what happens if it's just a crazy guy who loses it, and he thinks that everybody else is crazy too.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
one point, everybody has that in them to be a Joker, and
It's
he's just trying
weird.
to bring it out.
Yeah, it focuses more on the psychology of the character rather than the character himself. You know,
Hmm.
it's like if Joker was a disease. It's like, hey, look, here's somebody with that disease. And you're like, oh, wow, that's crazy. You know what I mean?
Well, and in the old comics, they used to do that with the Joker, right?
Right,
The Joker used to have the gas, right? And he would
right.
make everybody crazy like them.
Yeah,
I've not seen that in years in the
right,
story. And the reason it's too hard to do, right? Like
right.
the mental piece of turning everybody crazy and then, having to reset it to get everybody back to normal. Because
Yeah,
eventually that's what would have to happen, right? Batman would have to
yeah,
fix everything.
yeah. Yeah, that's a lot.
It is.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, I didn't even I saw the trailer for the Joaquin the sequel, right?
Hmm.
And it just felt like a continuation of the first one. And the first one really didn't. It was like, is this real or not? Like some of this stuff, is it happening in his head or is this? You know what I mean? I couldn't,
Yeah.
and I don't think they. It doesn't. I don't know. Just my feeling about it. It doesn't feel like they're giving you any more explanation in the sequel. It's just more of the same kind of like, is this real or not? You know what I mean? Um,
I think that's the actual catch to the movie, right? It's letting you make the decision.
yeah, yeah. And
It's
so I thought that was interesting. You know,
just like Inception was, right? Like when you watched Inception, like did this really happen, or is it a dream within a dream, right? Is
I love
which
that movie, man. That movie's
I
awesome.
do too. I
That's a
mean,
great movie.
I'm a huge Nolan fan, so I
Yeah,
mean,
me too. Yeah.
so I was like, okay, when he did that one, I was like, is he alive? Is he really, or is he in a dream, or is he stuck? Like you just don't know 100%. You don't know the answer at the end of the movie. You
What
think
was
he
that?
is.
What was that? He did that movie about the magicians
Hmm.
with Hugh Jackman, I think.
Yeah. What was that called?
That was great. It had David Bowie in it,
Mhm.
uh, and of course Michael Caine was in it.
Well, he's in every Nolan movie.
Wait, was that Hugh Jackman or was that no? I think it was. No, it wasn't Hugh Jackman. It was, or was it? Yeah, it was Hugh Jackman. It was Hugh Jackman and the guy who plays Batman.
Uh, um, Affleck.
No, no, no. The Nolan Batman,
The Prestige.
The Prestige.
Oh,
That was with Hugh Jackman, right?
yeah, Hugh Jackman and Christopher Bale. Yep.
Christian Bale. Man, dude, that movie was amazing. Uh, that was a really good movie. Uh, I like that one a lot.
And I think that's the thing with Nolan, right? He really makes you think in his movies. It's like you really gotta like. Did you ever see the movie Shutter Island?
Yes.
And like you actually think that it's all going on, and none of it's actually really going on.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
that was an interesting twist. I really liked how they kind of did that, and then they made you realize, like, oh no, no, you live here.
Yeah, you are part of the nut house.
You're part of this. Sorry. Yeah, that was a really good one too. That was Scorsese, right?
The Scorsese.
Yeah, that's a pretty good movie. Yeah, man, that's a lot of stuff like that I draw a lot of inspiration from for comic stuff. I read some comics, um, not as much as I did when I was younger. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't read as much as the Marvel and DC stuff. I liked them earlier, but now I just kind of bounce around between different things. Follow artists or writers specifically, and
Hmm.
take a lot of inspiration, like I said, from TV and film, and just follow other creators and seeing what they do. And right now, I'm really into the idea of creating like a more, I don't know, like connection with the people who are digging my work, and trying to establish. Like I used to do a lot more conventions in the like before COVID, and since after COVID, I haven't done as many, but I'm trying to work on a new print series of just characters of my own creation, or me trying out different genres of stuff. And I want to be able to open a store, like an online store of my prints, and I want to do like really cool, like screen printed prints on foil paper and stuff like that. And so I've been working on that on the side from my Coffin Comics work. And then, as I was mentioning to you earlier, where just taking the opportunity with my warm up sketches and my sketchbooks to showcase more of that kind of stuff and not make it so character centric or less.
Hmm.
And it's hard because a lot of times as an artist, it's easier to focus on something that's real popular at the time or a character that's popular at the time. And I used to do that a lot too. And now it's it's so much more rewarding when I can draw somebody in uh, from just exploring a genre or something that isn't character specific, and have them like the art just as much, if not more, than something like that. Then it feels like it's an advanced move to pull somebody in with your art without having to use unknown characters. So I'm kind of been into that a lot more lately, and I'll post like process sketches or sketch videos where I'm like drawing up an idea of a sketch, and I'll explore themes. I have a specific sketchbook that's all just Western theme right now. It's mostly Western, and it's like a 4 by 5 inch sketchbook, and the book itself comes with like 30 pages. Actually, I'll show you guys.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah, so
Yeah, I love seeing these every day.
yeah, so since the move, I hadn't been posting them as often, but I have these little sketchbooks. They're really cool. It's called the Sketch Wallet, and it comes with these little clips, and the clips hold the clips can hold the pages open. So like if I have a specific page, right, and it'll hold it open. So that's these clips. But I'll try to do at least 2 of these a week, not 3. And it's nice because the size makes it easy to do within 45 or so minutes. And like I said, the sketchbook is 30 pages, and I'll try to explore a theme. So like with this one, obviously she's Native American of some kind, but I also was playing with the idea of like a digital kind of a nomad type thing where what if it's like futuristic and Native American, right? And so here I played more with that idea, and instead of jewelry, she's wearing like what looks to be microchips or little parts of a
Circuitry.
computer, you know? And so I'll explore like that kind of an idea or go back to a Western theme. So this one has more of the same thing where she's native, but she's got like these pieces of computer parts on her hat and stuff. And I'll just keep exploring the ideas like that. And I get in and out of this sketch within 45 minutes or so. And so it's just good practice, but it's also has me trying things I wouldn't try if I was just doing a popular character. And, you know, I just gotten off of working on Lady Gunfighter. So I still had a little bit of that feeling in my art that I was enjoying working on. And like I said, I use pens and markers, brush pens, and just use it as an opportunity to explore, like I said, themes. So this one obviously is a little bit of a Western kind of vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it can get tough sometimes because after like 12 pages of gunfighters, it's like, well, what else can I draw? Like, shit, I already drew like a Native American girl. And so I think it gives me good exercise or practice. And then I'll put these sketchbooks up. Sometimes I can sell these as well.
Mm-hmm.
So people like to collect them. And so these are fun to do. But it'll be like a whole book filled with just original art sketches, you know. And I post the videos on Facebook and on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. The videos themselves are usually about, I don't know, between 30 or 40 seconds of me just sketching stuff out. And I started this other sketchbook too, where this is a little bit more interesting. I wished I did more videos where I would talk more, but I don't. And so I decided to start doing like a cartooning series where I'll share ideas or things I want to just talk about and draw myself in a cartoon and just share stories or things that have happened or my feelings about something. And I'll post those online as well. And I was worried I wasn't sure how people would enjoy them or not. And so far, people seem to get a kick out of them. I posted this one recently on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that one.
About Vincent van Gogh as a little kid. That he was born a year apart from a stillborn brother that his parents wouldn't talk about. And so sometimes walking around town, he'd walk by the graveyard and he would see a tombstone with his name and birth date a year before his date of birth. And it was just kind of, that was a messed up, creepy thing because his family wouldn't talk to him about it. And so I would have different cartoons and I've been posting these on a regular. So yeah, like on my Facebook, you'll find them, or my Instagram. just trying them out, just different ways of sharing words and pictures and my thoughts about stuff.
I love that one about
This
the
one,
Chipotle.
yeah. Did you read that? Like,
I did.
I don't know what it is, man. Like, anytime I go to Chipotle, like, I'm always rating the experience based on the protein portion I get on my bowl, you know. And it's like, there's nothing. I don't know. Like, when I get a nice serving, I'm like, yeah. But when I get a bad one, it can ruin my lunch. I'm like, what happened? Why did that person serve me so little chicken? What did I do to them? You know. And so I was sharing this cartoon about my gluttony and saying like, what a pig I am because. You know, I'm petty like that. Like I wanted a nice sized portion. And it was funny seeing everybody's reaction to it and what people thought about it. So it's just fun. I enjoy doing these cartoons because it gives it a little more insight about myself, but it also gives a way for people to connect and share their stories about experiences similar to that or exactly the same as that. So, yeah. And so this is something I've been doing recently. This one was a one about how as a little kid, anytime I was in a crowded space, I always imagined myself as the Millennium Falcon, like in an asteroid field. And so, as the Millennium Falcon, you didn't want any of the asteroids to hit you, right? So, I would just imagine myself zooming through all of these people who are now asteroids and just like imagining myself not getting hit by them. And so, it made being in a crowd so much more fun. And so, I just shared that experience. And so, yeah, this is like, it's just a new thing I've been doing. And it's a lot of fun. I think it forces me to express myself or be a better writer. And by a better writer, I don't mean like a novelist, but more so in the way of telling a story or connecting with someone in a way where they relate to you or want to share with you the same idea or that, oh, that happened to me too, or express themselves in a way that would want them to divulge something similar. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot of really cool connectivity to that I enjoy. And it feels good to practice that. And the other thing that makes it good is that it's only on one page. I don't get a lot of space to get wordy about it. So I have to be very concise on what I'm asking or expressing, but also do it in a way where someone wants to share or feel like they understand what I'm talking about, because it's mostly funny. It's never like zany brainy. It's just I don't know, kind of an anecdote for people to want to engage with it and be involved with it as well. But at the same time, if they ever saw me in person, they'll be like, I read that thing, or that was so funny, or you're the Millennium Falcon, or you know, whatever. But it's fun, and it's something I've been doing in the last 6 or so months, and I think I'm going to keep doing it and see what I can see, how many of these I can compile, and if I can make like a little, maybe like a little printed book version of them all, you know.
Oh, I'd buy that in a heartbeat. It's
That's
fun,
awesome.
right? Because it's a good way for like fans and friends to connect in with you to see like how you feel about things, right? Like other
Yeah.
than art, other than normal things, right? Like you didn't give me enough chicken. Damn it, where's my chicken?
Right.
Right?
Dude, seriously, right? Like,
You
you have no idea. Like, I would avoid certain servers if I had been to the same Chipotle. I would tell Beth, like, "Oh, it's that guy. Look, it's that guy. Let's wait and see if the other person goes and takes his place." Because I would
Mhm.
know right away, like, I'm gonna get a crappy portion. And I used to always tell her, because I would say, like, "Oh, you would think it was coming out of their paycheck. Like, what's the deal?" But that's just me being some petty ass person, you know what I mean? But that's just who I am. So it's like that's the stuff that I like sharing in those stories. And I have so many crazy things that I've done or I want to share in those cartoons that it's one or two of them I shared where somebody was like, "Oh, I've done something like that," and I was like, "Oh, cool," because I have a few more that I'm willing to like put down on paper, and I just think it's neat because sometimes you'll think, I must be crazy to think that, and then you find someone who relates. You know, like the Chipotle one. Like, I can't be the only one. You know,
No.
like someone else has to feel like this too. You know, so it's fun to connect that way. You know, so
Oh, I remember going to Taco Bell doing the same thing, right? Like you get the quesadilla, right? You get the one that's like this thick or the one like this, right? And there's like a little bit of cheese. I'm like, dude, you gave me 2 tortillas and a sprinkling. Where's the actual quesadilla? Or
Yeah,
if you order it with chicken, right? And it's like,
yeah,
I want more than 2 pieces of chicken per quesadilla chunk, right? And it's like, come on
yeah,
now.
yeah, man. That's how we all are, though. I mean, we all want. It feels good when you see them. Like, man, there was this one Chipotle we would go to when we lived in San Diego, and they they were really cool. They knew us as regulars, and so they even knew they were filling the bowl with the toppings we wanted before we would even say it. And then on top of that, it was just like just massive bowl, and I was just like,
See, and that's what's good is having the camaraderie, right? With with the people that you work with and you go with them with us, right? Like we get to see that, right? Like you're a
yeah,
human being. You have the same issues we all have. And we're able to connect at a different level, right?
yeah,
And so it makes it more personable for a lot of
yeah,
us, but then it also makes it like then you can see our side of it too. And so you realize, okay, we're all the same. We're all
yeah,
it makes it easy for everybody. They can connect it that way.
yeah. It's just I've always for me it started earlier on at Coffin when I oh man I think it was at the end of this book La Muerte Onslaught where at first I was just putting at the beginning of the book I just kept putting like Coffin Comics characters and names in the backgrounds on the walls. Um, and I was asking Jimmy Calabrese, like, what are some of the symbols that some of these, factions of characters have? And he would share them with me. And after a while, I was like, all right, that's cool. And then I don't know what page it was, but then somewhere in there, I started putting people's names,
Mm-hmm.
um, like fans. And people were taking notice of that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And so then it reminded me, like, I should do that more often. And so unfortunately, the very next chapter, I didn't get very many opportunities. I took them wherever I could for that book, but in that chapter, La Muerta La Muerta Primeval, they were in the
Mm-hmm.
jungle.
Yeah.
So there was only a couple places when they
The
were,
boat.
yeah, there was only a couple places when they were in the civilized world where I could put people's names, because then I'd say 75% of the book took place in the jungle, to then the following chapter, which was La Muerta Devious, I went all out, and that's when I made sure to put as many names as I could everywhere, because they were back in an urban setting in Arizona and in Mexico City. So I made sure to, just put as many names as I could in the book. I think I ended up putting over like 40 people's names in that chapter.
Nice.
So now I took a break and I was in Lady Gunfighter, which really was not that kind of a deal. They didn't have graffiti back then, so I didn't really get to do it. But now I've already 6 pages into this new chapter of La Muerta Nemesis, and I'm already about, I think, 8 to 10 names in.
Nice.
So I've already started the habit again, and I figure, well, I'll start sharing those pages when I can with people's names, so people can get excited to see that it's back.
We all appreciate that. Like, whenever you put mine in, that's the page I want to buy, because that's like that, we all have that thing that we want to do. Because it's like it's cool to see your name in a book. It really
Well, that's
is.
what I mean. The main thing is because it's in the printed book.
Exactly.
And that's cool. Like you see it one day and you're like, whatever. Maybe you buy the art, maybe you don't. But if you have the book, like your name's in that damn book, no matter what.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's cool.
That's kind of cool, right? So I enjoy doing that because I know people get a kick out of it, and I try to find ways to be creative about it. So we'll see. Like I said, I've got 40 plus more pages to go. So we'll be I'll be finding creative ways to keep it going,
And we all appreciate you doing that, because I mean it's so fun, because it actually makes it like a game for us. And we're all like trying to all right, did you make it in this one? No.
Yeah.
maybe the next one, and then you're all trying to find it. And you're like, oh, there it is.
That's the other thing too, is like trying to find names I know I haven't used, but people who I know would probably, because I've put names in there of people who didn't even buy the book, so they weren't able to appreciate it. So there's like it can be kind of luck of the draw sometimes, because I'll scour the Sworn Nation page to see people interacting and go like, have I used this person's name? You know what I mean? And I'll put it in there somewhere, and because it's nice to see. There's some that have been in the books pretty often, but it's always nice to have someone go like, oh, this is my first time, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, right on, and again, it's just, they don't have to buy the art, but to know like their name is in that book, they'll buy a copy of that book, they'll forever be a part of that chapter, so that's kind of fun.
And it is always cool. Well, and you had showed us too, like, right, like the way it's printed in the book versus the way it was done. You actually sometimes have more names in the way you did it first before
added. Get cut off or something.
Yeah. And so it's kind of cool to see that before and after, because there's people like, oh crap, I was in the book. Yeah, you just got cut off.
Yeah. So I try to do my best to be mindful of that, and but it's fun, especially when they notice it in the wild. When someone will point it out, like, I'm in this book, and it's just a kick. I love people checking it out and making a game of it. You know what I mean?
It is.
So that's cool.
Well, I got one thing or a couple things to show you. So I found some old books, some old Lamarta books.
Oh, dang.
So.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. So, that's really cool.
So I was able to get a couple of these old ones because I've been collecting this whole series that you've done, for the art editions and the Infinity Verse, right?
Yeah.
Those are hard to find. The old ones are harder to find, especially like this one.
Oh, dude, that one's pretty rare.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, limited to 30.
Yeah, man. And those are such collectibles now. I didn't realize it would be, Oh, that one's really cool. Yeah, I remember those. That's really fun.
And it's fun for us because, like, for me, like, trying to go find the old ones, because that was before I joined Coffin, right? Like, Vengeance. Like, I joined in when Retribution, Retaliation were out. And so trying to go back and get some of these old books, like, crap, they're all gone. Nobody got them no more.
Right. Yeah, that's such a unique thing about those books, because they do so many like variants, but then they'll be so limited at times. And I don't even think about it, but like there's a market for some of those rare books, and I only realized it later, like you just did right now, where I'm like, oh damn, like that's pretty cool. I saw Kat England, she bought some recent books like from way back, and I was like, holy crap, like I forgot about that book. And I think it's pretty neat to see,
Me and Kat been pretty much trying to collect the whole run, that
that's cool.
And it's hard because there's only 20 to 30 of each book. And so it's like anytime you see it go online, like in this one Lady Death for Sale page, we're always jumping on it. And like if I see stuff like this, I'm always jumping on it, because you're just not going to find it. It's just so tell you snatch it up now, you're never going to get it. But it's like, but then you're going to see that one random person on eBay. Occasionally they'll say, oh, I'm just going to get offload this, and it's like sometimes you get lucky on a good price. Sometimes you got to pay. You got to pay to play.
That's the funny thing about I have 2 copies left, but I had this variants, like the black and white one you just shared, but it's of the Mariachi La Muerta. And I had Brian and Mike sign it. I put a little remark on it, and I got them graded. And I didn't realize at the time when I did it that they were already that rare. And so I still have it, and I was just like, crap, I don't know. These are great. Like, I don't know. I guess I could take him to a convention, but it feels like such a unique thing. I could only ever really take it to Swornfest for someone to really appreciate it. Uh, so I have them, but I just don't. I never know what to do with them. I think I took one or two to Swornfest this last time. I might bring them back in the next one. We'll see.
And that's the thing is like somebody from our Gomez group probably somebody that would buy it, like me, Jay, or Kat probably would buy
Right.
it because it's just a niche piece, right? And it's just so hard.
Exactly.
You're
Yeah.
not, and that's the thing too is like even graded stuff. Like there's people who like graded stuff. There's people who don't like it, right? Some people like
Right.
it. It's like to me, it doesn't bother me either way. As long as it's in good shape, right? That's the main
Right.
thing. But then sometimes if it's graded, you protect the book too, right?
Yeah.
Like in that situation, you've got a remark done, you've got signatures on it. It
Yeah.
makes sense at that point to grade that book to keep it
Yeah.
from getting anything. And it's already limited to 30 anyways. So it's
Yeah.
already a limited book. You add the remark, you add the signature, so you're talking $200, $300 book at the best.
These I didn't even realize. I forgot they're APs.
Oh, and it even adds more if it's an AP because that you only get so many of those from
Yeah,
something.
exactly. So I was just like, I don't even know what to do with these. I'm gonna store them away. We'll see, maybe later or some other time. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's a fun thing. The what do you call it? Like the aftermarket, the possibility or the potential of these things being sought after or collectible. Because I guess they're all collectible, but is the interest there? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So you never know. I mean, the best thing you could do is put your best foot forward or make the illustration as nice as you can, and hope people enjoy the work.
Well, it's like I find some of your original art editions, right, from way back when, occasionally on eBay, right? And
Right.
people don't like. I got one. It was green. It was a CGC green one, right? Instead of a CGC normal blue,
What does that
silver. That means it's unverified, right? Like they didn't
Oh.
verify the signature before they graded it, and it was an original art edition, so nobody originated it. And so I'm like, okay, but to me, it's still what it is. Like somebody doesn't know what this is.
Right, you knew what it was.
I know exactly what it was. I'm like, and it's the wraparound cover, right? It's one of the wraparound ones you did a long time ago, and I'm like, I'll buy that. I have no problem buying that because I know how much that book would have cost back then. Now I know how much that book is worth today, and it's because I want that art.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, that's like I said, it blows my mind because you have no control over, or I don't have any control over how those things play out, if there's a market for it or not. And the only thing I could do is, be as creative as I can with it, or the opportunity, or put my best foot forward and make it as nice as possible. And you just hope for the best. I've seen enough of those books from other artists that they do gangbusters. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So it's neat. It's always neat to see when that stuff. And I think what's even more interesting is like I don't like. For me, I think I haven't seen as many of other artists doing like the sketch cover editions as much as I have out there. But they all have their own specialty type of thing, and those books still do great. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like you don't do a lot of metal and you don't do a lot of holofoil. Yours is more trade stock because you want the image to be the image, versus being changed by that. And that's how your signature is. That in the original art editions, like that's what I know you buy with coffee.
Yeah.
But if I look at like Marat or if I look at Kincaid and those guys usually always have a metal edition of something because it's a metal version of what they've done.
Right.
But it's different too, right? It's like there might be a color difference or it might be something done differently.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Like an enhancement or something.
Yeah,
that's true.
So I'm good with these guys.
That's awesome, man. That's super cool.
All right. So what's on the future for you? I know you were saying something about Nemesis earlier with La Muerta.
Yeah, I'm doing I'm currently working on La Muerta Nemesis. I'm always happy to, be back on that book. I love working on La Muerta and just working on scripts from Brian and Mike. It's like it's easy for me. Every time I read his scripts, it just feels like I'm watching a TV show or a movie. So I see it like that, you know. I actually have the opportunity to do. I'm doing some cover work for some other indie publishers.
Mm.
So I'm doing one company. I'm doing a cover for is Magma Comics.
Okay.
There's a book they're doing called Day of the Dead Girl.
Ah.
And I'm doing a cover for issue 2 of that. And I'm also doing a Conan cover thing for, I think it's Heroic Signatures and Titan Comics.
Titan.
They're partnering up on they publish a Conan book.
Yeah, Titan bought the rights to Conan.
Yeah, so it's like Heroic Signature and Titan. Like, I don't know, both of those guys. I'm doing a cover for Conan. So that's coming up. And then anything, I just finished doing a cover for Ninja Witch.
Mm.
So that, and, you know, anything coffin related that we have planned coming up, I'll be working on that. But yeah, it's been fun. I've had a couple, like I said, opportunities with other smaller publishers or indie publishers, and just getting the chance to try some stuff out. Or it's always neat to play in other sandboxes that I have, you know, little experience in. I'm excited for the Conan cover. I thought that would be kind of fun. So yeah, we'll see. And like I said, back to La Muerta, and we'll see what comes after that.
Definitely. Well, I will say I've got the Ninja Witch print that you did, you know, from Justin.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so thank you for putting those little extra remarks on all of them. You know,
of course.
You know, we all appreciate it. It was a good little surprise when we opened up the package.
Well, that's the thing. I'm always aware. Like I always love that feeling when I would get something, or I'd see Beth would sometimes order something from a streamer that she watches, and it was always, it felt like an extra mile that was went when she'd open up something and have like a little personal note with a little doodle on it or something. And this is cool. I like that feeling. And I know that I feel like, well, if I got something like that, that would be cool. So I imagine other people enjoy just getting a little bit of something extra. Makes it more unique, you know?
It makes it fun for all of us. And we appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, of course, man.
All right, so where can people find you at? I know you have a card that you wanted to show.
Yeah. So this card, basically, I'm getting more active with my newsletter. So let me switch my camera here. Yeah. So this QR code has all my socials, and I post a semi-monthly newsletter where I share art process or behind the scenes on things like my cartooning or my daily sketches or the print series that I'm currently working on. It's going to be a print series and stickers. So it'd be great if people want to check that out, or want to follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, or TikTok. You can find all of that stuff right here on this QR code, and drop me a line. Yeah, I'd love for people to come check it out, say hi, and look forward to people catching up with me there. So yeah, that'd be awesome.
And it's fun, guys. So I put some of those links down below too in the description of this video, just in case. And go check it out. Racer Crumbs is always fun to read when it comes out. You know, Joe puts that out.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
And then I put a copy to his shop page because he does sell stuff too out there. So definitely.
Thank you, Nick, and I appreciate it. It's like I said, it's been a real treat. Coffin Comics has been a great platform for me to connect with all these awesome fans and meet people like yourself, and it's just fun. It's a cool experience to be a part of this whole fun, creative mess that we call comics, and I'm just trying to extend all of that and invite people into my world.
And we appreciate you, and thank you, Beth, for being around tonight. We always love you.
Thank you, Beth, for being around tonight.
Thanks,
She says thumbs up.
All right, folks. Well, that's it for tonight. We've been going on for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And it just goes by. It's a fun time.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it, and great hanging out.
You too, brother. And we'll have to do it again once we get closer to the next book, because I'm
for
interested.
sure.
I'm interested to see some more pages from that one when it comes out.
Oh, for sure. I've got plenty. Like I said, I've got 96 pages of stuff I could share, but I have to wait till the book comes out.
Exactly. All right, folks. Y'all take it easy and have a good night. We'll see you guys on the next Creator Spotlight. All right.
Take care, guys.
Bye, y'all.